Good morning, boys and girls. Okay, we're going to do chapter 9 this morning. We are going to read The Chinese Dinner. Mario decided that there must be something wrong with Chester's diet if he was eating $2 bills. He had been feeding him all the things he liked himself, but now it occurred to him that what was good for a boy might not be good for a cricket. So he made up his mind to take that matter to an expert. Late one afternoon, when he got off duty at the newsstand, Mario cleaned up the cricket cage, gave Chester a dusting off with a Kleenex, and took him to Chinatown to see Sai Fung. It was almost 7 o'clock when he got there, and the shop was closed. He peered through the window and could make out a crack of light under the door to the inner room. And he heard the choppy murmur of two voices talking together in Chinese. Mario rapped on the glass. The voices stopped talking. He rapped again, louder. The inside door opened and Sai Fung came into the shop, squinting through the half light. When he saw Mario, his chin dropped and he said, "Ah, it's little Cricket Boy." And he opened the door. "Hello, Mr. Fong," said Mario. "I don't want to bother you, but I have a problem with my cricket." "Ah, you come in, please," said Sai Fong, closing the door behind him. "Our very old friend here know everything about crickets." So he led Mario into the next room, which was the kitchen. And on a black cast-iron stove there were half a dozen pots, steaming and singing. The table was laid with beautifully painted china plates. On them were pictures of Chinese ladies and gentlemen, dressed in colored gowns and robes, walking on little bridges over a calm blue lake. Beside the places that had been set were 2 pairs of chopsticks, each one in its own paper wrapper. A very old Chinese gentleman was sitting in a rocking chair next to the window. He had a thin gray beard that hung down from his chin and was wearing a long red and gold robe that looked like the ones on the plates. When Mario came in, he stood up slowly with his hands folded and bowed. Mario had never had an old Chinese gentleman bow to him before, and he didn't quite know what to do. But he thought he had better bow back, and then the old Chinese gentleman bowed again, and so did Mario. They might have gone on bowing all night if Sai Fung hadn't said something in Chinese to his friend, and it sounded like this: and it means, "This is the boy with the cricket." Mario and Chester stole a glance at each other, but neither one of them understood Chinese. The old man, however, became very excited. He peered down through the bars of the cricket cage and exclaimed with delight. Then, drawing himself up to his full height, he made a very low and solemn bow. Chester bowed back and gave one of his most polite chirps. That pleased the Chinese gentleman very much. It sounded like the cheerful clicking of hundreds of chopsticks. When they finished telling each other how fine a cricket Chester was, Sai Fung said to Mario, "You like Chinese food, please?" "Yes, I do," answered Mario. I guess. He had never had anything Chinese except chop suey, but he was awfully fond of that. "You wait, please," said Sai Fung. He disappeared into the shop and came back in a minute with 2 new robes. "This one for you," he said, helping Mario on with the sun, moon, and stars stitched all over it. "And this one is mine," said Sai Fung, putting on his own robe, which was blue and green, covered with pictures of fish and reeds and water lilies. The old Chinese gentleman whispered something to Sai Fung, and Sai whispered an answer back in Chinese. "So sorry," he said to Mario. "No rose small enough for a cricket." Oh, that's all right, said Mario. Oh, you sit, please, said Cy, and brought another chair to the table. Mario sat down, and the Chinese gentleman sat opposite of him. Cy Fong put the cricket cage in the middle of the table, and then went back and forth to the stove, bringing over steaming bowls of Chinese food. Chester was very curious to see what it tasted like, since he had never even had chop suey. "Oh, this Chinese yuck, Chinese vegetables," said Cy Fong, setting down the first bowl. There were all kinds of green vegetables in the chow yuck. String beans and pea pods, and also pieces of diced chicken. Next came fried rice with pork, cooked a delicious brown with a nutty, meaty flavor. And then chow mein with pan-fried noodles and cashew nuts. But it wasn't all soupy like the chow mein Mario had seen at the automat. He could have made a meal just out of the pan-fried noodles alone. And last, there was duck cooked with pineapple. The pieces of roast duck were swimming in a luscious sweet sauce. Finally, Cy Fong brought over a big pot of something. "Ah, you know what this is?" he asked, and lifted the lid. Mario looked in. "Tea?" he said. "Ah-hee!" laughed Cy Fong. "Ah, you my very good Chinaman," he said, and smiled broadly at Mario. Mario had a hard time learning to use the chopsticks. They kept slipping out of his hand. "I make believe 2 very long fingers," said Cy Fong. 2 long fingers. 2 long fingers, Mario told himself over and over again. And then he could work them. He got so that he almost could feel the food on the end of them as he lifted them to his mouth. Chester was served his dinner too. Cy Fong got a tiny saucer out of the cupboard and put a dab of each course on it for the cricket. And he had never tasted anything this good. He especially liked the chow yuck because vegetables were his favorite. Every so often, he would have to stop eating and chirp for joy. Whenever he did, the Chinese gentleman and Cy Fong smiled and chattered to each other in Chinese. Mario felt the same way Chester did, but he didn't chirp. All he could do to show how much he was enjoying everything was to answer, "Yes, please," each time Cy Fong asked him if he wanted more. When the 4 of them had eaten as much as the chow yuck and the chow mein and pork fried rice and the duck with the pineapples that they wanted, Cy Fong brought out some candied kumquats for dessert. Mario had 2 and several more cups of tea. Chester was so full he could only nibble on a piece of one. "And now," said Cy Fong, when they were all finished, "what is problem with cricket?" He lit his white clay pipe, and the old Chinese gentleman lit one too. They sat smoking with the wisp of the smoke curling up around them and their chins, looking very wise. Mario thought, "Well, the problem is," Mario began, "that my cricket eats money." And he told him all about that $2 bill, and Cy Fong had to translate everything into Chinese for his friend. After each new sentence, the old man would nod his head and say, "Ah, oh, in a serious voice. "So I think he must not be getting the right things to eat," Mario concluded his story. "Ah, a very excellent deduction," said Cy Fong. And he began talking rapidly in Chinese, and then he stood and said, "You wait, please," and went into the shop. And in a moment he was back, carrying a big book under his arm. And as the 2 Chinese were reading it, they'd stop now and then and mutter something to each other. Mario went around behind them. Of course, he couldn't read the Chinese characters, but there were pictures in the book, too. One showed a princess sitting on an ivory throne, and on a stand beside her was a cricket cage, just like Chester's. and all of a sudden the Chinese gentleman began to squeak with excitement. "You Li, you Li," he said, tapping the page with the stem of his pipe. "Ah, here is," Saifang exclaimed to Mario. "This is story of Princess of Ancient China. Had cricket for pet and fed him mulberry leaves. It says, just as silkworm who eat a mulberry tree spins beautiful silk, so cricket who eat leaves spin beautiful songs." "Then we've got to find a mulberry tree," said Mario. The only one he knew of right off hand was in the Botanical Gardens in Brooklyn, and that had a fence around it. "But I have thing," said Saifang, and his face curled up with a smile as wide as a Halloween pumpkin. "A right out window." He went to the window and pulled up the shade in the courtyard outside the mulberry tree. Was growing. One of its branches almost stuck into the kitchen. Sai pulled off about a dozen leaves and put them on the cricket cage, but Chester, he didn't touch it. Mario was dismayed. He said, "He doesn't like it." "He lied. He just full of Chinese dinner right now," said Sai. And that was exactly the truth. Any other time, Chester would have been gobbling up that leaf, but he was stuffed now. Just to show them that leaves were what he wanted, however, he managed to take one bite. You see, he eat leaf when he hungry." Chester was feeling so contented that he had to sing for a while. Everyone listened very quietly. The only other sound was the creaking of the rocking chair, which went very well with the cricket song. Saifang and his friend were very touched by the concert. They sat with their eyes closed and expressions of complete peace on their face. When it was over, the old Chinese gentleman blew his nose on a silk handkerchief and he had taken out of his shirt sleeve. His eyes were moist. Dabbing at them with the handkerchief, he whispered something to Saifang. "He say it like being in Palace Garden to hear cricket sing," Saifang translated to Mario. The boy thanked Saifang for the Chinese dinner and said that he would have to go for now because it was late. "You come back any time," said Saifang, and he put the 11 mulberry leaves into a little box and gave it to Mario. "Plenty leaf for a tree, I say for a cricket." And Mario thanked him again. The old Chinese gentleman stood up and bowed, and Mario bowed to him. Saifang bowed, and Mario bowed to him too. And in the cage, Chester was bowing to everybody. Mario backed towards the door, still bowing, and went out. It had been a very nice evening, and he felt formal and polite from all the bowing. And he was glad that his cricket had been able to make the two Chinese gentlemen happy. All right, we're done with that chapter, guys.